last 10-15 minutes of the job. Well, pointing anyway. So we've pointed the rest of the gear. We've just got this little section left to do, so we're going to show you how we apply it. There's various ways that you can put the mortar on the wall. This is just how we do it. This is how we find that we get the best effect and the best finish of the mortar. So before we put any mortar on the wall, we soak it. So I've already soaked this bit. Because there's a lime mortar at the back, see the black mortar there, that's the original lime mortar of the wall was constructed off. And if you were to point cement or any kind of mortar straight onto lime mortar, because it's so porous, it'll pull moisture out of that mix into the wall. And that'll dry your mortar out too quick. It goes all crumbly. So for a slower cure, you damp the old existing lime mortar down first. So we spray it, but you don't want it too wet, so we'll spray it, leave it 5 minutes, and then there's no water sat on the old lime mortar, because what that can do is if the wall's too saturated, the mortar can bleed. So as the mortar's curing, the water's evaporating from the mix, and as it's evaporating, it pulls the chromium salts out of the cement mortar, and it can bleed down the wall. So when you see white stains on a cement pointed wall, that's when the chromium salts have been pulled out, and they bleed down the wall. You can get them off with like a brick acid, but they do tend to, once water gets onto that mortar, once water gets onto the mortar again, it will bleed some more. So the best way to alleviate that problem is to make sure that the wall isn't too wet first, or your mix isn't too wet, because it can do exactly the same thing. If your mix is too wet, then that'll pull the salts out of the wall. So we soak this, so I'll show you how we do it on this mortar we've done. It's just a quick, if you imagine if that was a lime mortar, we just spray over it, follow all your joints, make sure everything's dampened down. You can use a sprayer. Your little hand sprayer. You can use a soft brush with buckets of water, but you will be getting a lot of water onto the wall, and so you're better off investing in a sprayer of some sorts. So that's that. So the mix that we're using is a 5-to-1. So in that 5-to-1, that means that for every 1 part cement is 5 parts sand. And then if you break that down further, that 5 parts of sand in it, is four parts Waddington fell sand, which is like a medium coarse sand, and 1 part pointing sand. So that makes a real dense mortar mix. So moisture isn't going to be getting through this mix. So when we're mixing it, we mix it for a good long time, about half an hour. And that makes sure all the constituents of the mix are fully combined, and you've got an even mix then. And so we're not using any plasticizer in our mix, because what you find with plasticizer is it entrains air into the mix. So because we've used a dense mortar mix in it, we don't want any air particles in that mix, because if water does ingress into that mortar, when it freezes, if those air pockets are full of water, it will blow the mix. And you tend to find with plasticizers, you leave your trowel marks in it. So it's my opinion, but I don't particularly like the look of a finished mortar when it's a plasticizer in it. So we don't put any in ours. So to alleviate that problem of the malleability of the mix, if you mix it up for a good half an hour until that mortar's slapping against the side of the mixer, you know you've got a real creamy, well incorporated mix. So that's what we've got here. So before you put any on your hawk, just keep knocking it up. What that does is breaks the bonds that have already started forming in that mortar mix, and it increases the malleability of it, so it makes it a lot creamier. So as regards the tools that we use for pointing, there's various different kinds of hod or hawk. So you can use a mastic hawk, or a mastic hod, and that's ideal for if you want to get, if you've got your verticals, you can use the side of the hod to get the mortar onto the trowel to put it onto the wall. But the problem with like a smaller hod, if you've got a big area to point up, you kind of get a massive amount of mortar on that hod, so you will spend more time going back to the bucket, reloading the trowel, reloading your hod. So we've got an old plastering hawk, does exactly the same. So you can, once your mortar's on the board, you can just take bits off, put it on. And you can also run it across the horizontals, so you're getting a lot of mortar onto the wall in a faster amount of time, a shorter amount of time, sorry. My particular favourite, you will tend to find with the plastering hawk that 90-degree angle, if you're holding your hod up at an angle, it does, well, because of my like little weak wrists, I tend to find that I get a bit of muscle cramp on in my wrists if I'm using the hawk. So my particular favourite is this, called the pointsman. So it's a smaller hawk, but it's just as wide as the plastering hawk, and it's exactly the same. So I can get my mortar up, put it on, I can run it along the horizontals, and that angle there is a lot more comfortable on the wrist. I don't get any strain, I don't get any ache in my palms. It's a lot more comfortable to use on if you're pointing like over an extended amount of time. So that's my particular favourite. So you just knock it up a little bit, increasing malleability, put it on, and then I just smear it to the back of my pointing hawk. Then I've got a solid amount of mortar there that ain't going to come off the hawk, and I can get it into the joints. So you can use, this is an old-fashioned pointing trowel. Sometimes they're a little bit smaller than that, and they're ideally used for brickwork. So you can take your mortar off. So if you've got bigger areas to do, something like that, you can use a pointing trowel to get more mortar into that joint. Then all you do with that, once it's on the wall, you use a smaller trowel. It's my trusty 1/2-inch pointing trowel. And you can see how over the time that I've been using it, it has worn down to that point. So I can push that right into the back of the joint there. So we don't want any air behind this mortar, because that can increase the chances of it blowing, bleeding, or mortar failing. So that's my 1/2-inch trowel. Oh, or you've got a 3/4-inch trowel, so finishing it off. Pull that back in there. So when you're pointing up, we always start at the bottom of the structure, because what we found then is over the days as you're putting the mortar on the wall, gravity will pull moisture down through that mix, which is ideal really, because you don't want this going off too fast. So the more mortar is on the wall, even though it's curing, the moisture and the water in this fresh mortar will move down the wall, and that slows the cure up. So we never start at the top and work down, we always start from the bottom and work up. So we've got these. So we start with the horizontal joints first, and so what you can do, like as I was knocking the mix up, you can do that on your board with the trowel, and that just makes it creamier and more malleable, easier to get onto the joints, into the joints I should say. So first things first, we just make sure that there's enough mortar into those joints, and we use both sides of the trowel. So when I'm doing that, I'm pushing the top of that bed of mortar in, and then same on the bottom. So I'm using both sides of the trowel to pack that joint out. And you can use the end of the trowel in tight joints like this, just to get more mortar in. So as you saw then when I did it, how the mortar's smeared right against the back of that joint, and I can put a lot of pressure in there, make sure that joint's full. And what I'll probably do is carry on over the length of the horizontal, work it in, and then on the verticals, I'll always just run the trowel down there, because I know that joint there, these joints where you, them perpendicular joints, you've got the biggest, there's more mortar going into your perpendiculars is what I'm trying to say. Struggling for words there. So when you go up the verticals, I always work them in, work it in there, and then once I've got that base coat of mortar on, I can go over it again. I can just finish it then. I can get like preliminary finish of mortar on it. So once I've filled that up, I just follow that top arris, work it in, the same on the bottom. You see sometimes there you get little voids, so I just work the trowel and then make sure that joint's completely full. And then with the verticals, exactly the same. So I'm using each side of the trowel, pulling those snots back into the joint, so we're not smearing mortar over the beyond the arises. That's nice and full. Put it up. And then just keep going exactly the same as what we've done on the horizontal. Like that. And then that awkward bit at the bottom of the perpendicular. Just work it right in. Get a little bit more mortar to the top of that joint. Nice and full there. Same on that one. Let's reload the heart. It's always tempting to load that hawk right up. And the more mortar you have on your hawk, the more difficult it is to use the hawk to get the mortar on the trowel. So I just like fill it up about half to 3/4 of the hawk and just keep going. Keep working it in there. Oh. Keep filling that joint right up. You can see there as you're filling it up, that's my arris line there. So I know that I'm still about 4 or 5 mil short of mortar. Just keep building that up. A little bit more on. So I'm over my arris there. So I can finish that joint up. A little bit more up there. Another one. And I'll do the one to the right of that. Just fill that right up. Just like that. And then a little bit more. Just to fill that joint up from arris to arris. So don't get too anal about your finish quality, because the more we work this mortar up, the more fat comes out of that mortar, and in the fat there's not as much coarse material, so all the finer material comes to the top the more we work it, so we don't really want that. So keep your work, don't mess about with it. Once it's on the wall, just let it cure and do its thing. So what I'll do is I'll just carry on going here until we've pointed all this up. A bit of tight joint there, so I can use the end of the trowel so it's worn down. And don't be tempted, I know it's very tempting. You've got a big joint there, so you can get loads in like that. But the more mortar you try and push into that joint, the more chance there is of leaving voids behind the back. You can see how much that mortar pushed into the joint then. So when I'm filling my joints up, I try and put like not a massive amount of mortar into the joint. So that arris is full there. See the snots down there, so what I could do, I could pull them back to my arris line of that stone. Just keep working it in. So I can see there's like a bit of a void there. Nice and full. keep working that mortar, keep that malleability in it. Filling that up. Let's push that joint in. Keep filling it up. So when you first start pointing, you won't be able to, like, you'll probably struggle to get the mortar on the wall. But on a job like this where you've got like 55, I think it was 60 metres, 60 square metres of pointing to do, by the time you get to like 50, 55 metres, you should be quite proficient at this. Line joints up. More mortar. Clean that out. So if you find that your mortar is getting more difficult to put into the joint as it's starting to cure, just spend a bit of time with a shovel or a spade just knocking that mix up. And with a cementitious mortar, you can, to a certain degree, add some more water to that mix in the bucket just to loosen it up a little bit, increase the malleability. But keep in mind what we were saying before, the more water you put into that mix, the more chance there is of it bleeding the salts down the structure once it's cured. If you put a little bit more water into the mix, it does become a lot more malleable. It's very repetitive. It's quite a meditative process. The days just seem to zoom by. But I guess if you decide that you don't like pointing, they're probably one of the longest days that you'll ever have on site, because it'll blast your head. But luckily I really enjoy it, so I don't mind doing this. The joys of being a simpleton, I guess. Carry on across there. A bit too much mortar onto that joint then, so I'm just using the tip of the trowel to get as much force into that joint to work it in. That's it. Get that preliminary finish on it. Get that perf in. So when you've like finished your section, you shouldn't see any bits of mortar have spelched over the face. It should be a nice flowing finish to the mortar. But because cement is has such a high tensile strength, if we get big joints such as that, we can just gob that up with cement. We know that it's going to cure as good as it can do. Whereas if we were using lime mortar, we'd have to pack that out with stones, because it doesn't have the same tensile strength as the cementitious. Oop, I'll say that. It doesn't have the same tensile strength as lime mortar as cement-based mortar. It's a lot easier to use. A cementitious mortar, if you don't have any prior knowledge of using it, then it is to use a lime-based mortar, a lime putty or an NHL. That's full. We're nearly there now. The end is in sight. Good work. So as you push your trowel in, you will find that we call them snots. They'll splay over the side, so you can pull them back in with the trowel, just so you're not staining the actual stone that you're pointing up. Work that in. So on this section of wall, what we've done is we've replaced these parapets and we've back pointed here because there is going to be a fillet over going from just behind that arris down to this quarter stone. So there'll be like a quarter stone, so there'll be about 4 or 5 inch of a fillet on there. So what we're going to do first is just make sure the wall's pointed up, and then once this has started to cure properly and it's been scraped off tomorrow, we can come back and put the fillet on then. It's just a case of like setting your job out, just so you don't get to a section of the project and oh, I forgot to do that. So we'll point the gable first, and then the finishing job is to put the fillet on. But we're not finished pointing yet. So we'll just get these last couple of courses of these last couple of joints pointed up. Thankfully the weather's been with us on this job, but especially when you get to the top pike, because this is called the pike of the wall. If it's raining, then we couldn't do this because we're not sheltered by the deck of scaffolding above. So if it was raining, we'd probably just go home and put his feet up, because there's nothing really you can't really, you're wasting your time if you try to point in the rain unless it's covered up. You might as well stop in bed. Like that, and then that big joint there. So all I'm doing with that is just back pointing it until the joints are filled, and you can feel it on your trowel. You'll feel when that joint's full. Go over it again. Keep filling that joint up. Some more mortar. We'll find that when you get to the bottom of the bucket, the quality of the mortar isn't quite as good as when there were more mortar in the bucket. Up in the north of England, we call this borderline camel. When it gets a bit too lumpy and the malleability of it's gone. So what we could do with this, if it did cure a bit too much to the point where it's unworkable, we can just put it back in the mixer for 10 minutes, knock it up. And that'll put some life back into the mix, make it more malleable. But this is good to work with this, because we've got that nice creamy finish to it there, so we know there's not too much water in this mix. We're going to get a decent cure off it, and it'll provide adequate function to the gable end. It'll be shedding water. We have put some vents in this wall so that any moisture that's locked in this structure over time can vent itself out into the air instead of being trapped in that cavity and then transgressing through the brickwork into the property. Because this particular property, on the lift below, there was a lot of more moisture ingressing into the cavity. So because cementitious mortar isn't breathable, if any moisture did get into this cavity, it can't escape, and it will just go through. So what we've done is we've put some vents in. We'll have a look at them in a little while. We'll show you how they function to ventilate this gable end, get some air moving through it. Any moisture that gets into that cavity can escape back out into the air. It's not causing us any dramas. So there we are. All that's been pointed up. So we can leave that now to cure, and we'll come back and scrape it off. So where's the vent? So we have There was, there we are. So, let's get Nicholas trowel. What we do with these is we'll drill into that perk, right through into the cavity. So at that point, we have ventilation through into that cavity there. And we've put these about every 6 to 7 foot through the wall. So there's an even amount of, when the air's moving into the structure, it's getting through into the cavity. It's coming up through the wall and it's coming out through these other vents. And we've put there's some more vents there. And they sit on top of the wall plate, but beneath the slates. So when the air moves through there, we haven't got any, the slates aren't sweating, because this, underneath these slates there is an old bitumen felt, and you will find that moisture will condense on that bitumen felt because it's not breathable. So because it's a gable, when we've put the parapets back on, we've put these vents in just to get air moving through it. So right, so that's the mortar's on the wall, so we'll come back when we're scraping it off and we'll show you how we finish it.